And it is the 11th of October, inching towards Election Day, and ballots are out going to be very soon, very soon. And with me here is the chairman of the Young Republicans of Oregon, Stephen Lloyd. Stephen, thanks for joining me here tonight.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you tonight.
Yeah, we have fun on this show. You've been on this show before, and I think you were even on once when you had COVID, if I recall.
Yeah.
So we've been down this path before, but it seems like the news continues and remains interesting. And so let's launch into it here. And I think we wanted to start off with what I'm going to call the opening laugh. And yes, folks, David couldn't join here tonight. I should mention because he has a day job which keeps him busy. And so he got, unfortunately, overly busy with that. So Stephen was very kind to hop in and be our guy here tonight. And our opening laugh is the famous defund the police politician who denies that she was ever for defunding the police, which is just a complete lie. But
Yeah.
Not only is she down in the polls to her opponent, Renee Gonzalez, who's at 50%, and she's at about 26%. But she actually forgot to put her voter pamphlet's photo in the voter pamphlet that goes out to every person who's going to be voting. So hilariously, it says no photos submitted. And the only thing I'll say about this is, for the first time in Oregon election history, I think actually she might be the only candidate who will benefit from having a no photo submitted there for where she would normally appear. She has a certain look to her that I think probably doesn't help her, to be fully and completely frank about it. What'd you think of this one?
Well, I got to tell you, she's one of the most divisive local political personas that we have in Oregon. And she's had her stints in the newspaper before, so I'm pretty sure everybody knows what she looks like, including those individuals that had to stop by and pick her up from the gas station because her Uber refused to drive her any farther because of her drunken, disorderly action. But that didn't throw her in jail like it would have anybody else, any other member of the community. You get special privileges when you're Joanne Hardesty.
So right now, actually, I was listening to Lars Larson today when I was driving around, and he actually related something from it's the Willamette Week, does interviews with the candidates, and they went after her, which is pretty unusual because Willamette Week's usually like, oh, Joanne Hardesty, we worship you, we worship you. And maybe the worm has turned here. Willie Week decided to ask her some critical questions about one of the neighborhoods in Portland that had requested something that she advertised as an idea of her great solution to drive-by shootings, which is to create these barriers, put up these barrels and stuff that would force people to drive around them. Therefore, they couldn't as easily engage in drive-by shootings. And they requested it a year ago. And she told the Willamette Week that, in fact, she had no recollection of it. And then they produced an email from her saying to her and from her saying that not only did she receive this request, but someone in her office responded back to them. Was it Dalton Park? I can't remember exactly which neighborhood, but so somebody who actually liked her idea responded, and she didn't do anything about it for a year.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, whether it's getting a little bit more training on your Google Calendar, or whether it's coming to terms with some of the issues that she's actually responsible for, I personally feel like that project that she worked on, creating those barrels, slowing down traffic in those areas, what it really does is it causes more surface street congestion. And I personally think that maybe she should backpedal a little bit. We could really appreciate some flip-flopping, and I would really appreciate if she supported the police, because I can guarantee you, if you had more police in the neighborhood, you would stop those drive-by shootings.
No, that's right. And actually, they admitted that one of the things these barrels does is it essentially shuts down certain
Yep.
roads so that you can't drive through them, is what it does. And then as a result, the local people have to go and do these serpentine paths to get out of their own neighborhood every day. And I can understand how they might consider that a trade-off versus being shot. But what you propose is actually the optimal solution, which she unfortunately is on the record opposing time and again. She redirected tens of millions of dollars away from law enforcement to all kinds of other stuff, and then said that she didn't think law enforcement had any job in preventing crime. They're supposed to show up after the crime and do an investigation, which takes months and usually doesn't find anybody.
Well, and the biggest issue that I have with Joanne Hardesty, since my time living in Portland, is the fact that she's spent literally millions upon millions of dollars on buying boulders. Well, Kevin, you tell me this. What do boulders? What is the solution that boulders fix? You know what it is? It's homelessness. They wanted to stop. They wanted to stop homeless people from being able to camp underneath bridges and underpasses that the city of Portland is responsible for dealing with the damage for. So they put a whole bunch of boulders so it's uncomfortable for the homeless. And I just have to say, these solutions to the real issues that Portland is solved by, or is struck with, are not solved by putting boulders or barrels in the way. It comes down to hard work and dedication of our police department. That would have fixed both the homelessness and it would have fixed the homelessness, the attributing factors with the homelessness and the issues with the drive-by shootings.
Well, and don't forget all the people, all those tents, many of which at times look brand new.
Yeah,
those guys didn't go to one of these shops that sell camping supplies and purchase them. They were given those tents by somebody. So it's like the city, because that money is coming from some nonprofit that is in fact getting its money from the government, most likely. So then the government is creating the problem, and then the government comes up with harebrained solutions to solve it, which don't work. And the only people in the end that seem to experience this nonsense twice are the people who pay for it. We're paying for the problem, we're paying for the fake solution, and then we pay for it by not having police and crime rampant all over the place. By the way, that is becoming a national theme. And there's an article from Just the News, one of my favorite publications we often cite here. And the article says, 7 days of mayhem, random killings expose lethality of Democrat crime policies. This is the past 7 days. And it says more than 3/4 of U.S. voters said violent crime is a major problem in one poll taken 1 month before Election Day, which is basically now. Here's the crimes that they enumerate. A college dad was shot by 2 homeless men high on drugs, long sought by the police. That sounds like a broken record. An illegal migrant who stabbed 8 on the Las Vegas Strip. Guy shouldn't have been in the country. He stabbed 8, killed 2. An abused wife slaughtered after her husband was released without cash bail. That was in Portland, actually, because apparently beating somebody isn't serious enough to be put in jail in Portland. And then in a single week, the Democrats' permissive approach to law enforcement, insecure borders, cashless bail, and exploding homelessness left a lethal wake of innocent victims that shook communities coast to coast and invigorated a political debate. It's less than 30 days from the midterms. It's like they're running TV ads, and then reality is running TV ads against them because their policies are so horrific. It is over and over. We're seeing the same thing. And then there was a guy named Paul Cutts, 53-year-old college dad. He was gunned down in a suburban New York hotel while visiting his son during a family weekend at Marist College. Tragic. The guy, the 2 homeless men were wanted in connections with crimes, were smoking a PCP-like substance. I'll bet you can get that substance in Oregon, and you can do so legally. And they had bomb-making materials in the room, which is what, of course, most people smoking PCP and hanging out like to do. And then this is the one that not only is changing people's minds across the country, but now even gubernatorial candidates are not safe. U.S. Congressman Lee Zeldin, who's the Republican nominee for governor in New York, he's focused relentlessly on the killing last week of a 40-year-old Kiera Benefield who was shot dead in front of her children while wearing a bulletproof vest and fearing for her life for her husband. Her husband is suspected of killing her after he was released on cashless bail of 5 different charges, including assault, harassment, menacing, none of which are bail eligible. Well, it's incredible. And this is what he was talking about. And then it turns out on Sunday, 2 men were shot in front of his Long Island house. Long Island, not usually a place you see a lot of crime, while his 2 daughters were inside the house. And they ran upstairs to take shelter. And apparently the shooting had nothing to do with him, although somebody did try to assassinate him a couple months ago. But the bullets landed just 30 feet from the house where his 2 daughters were just sitting at the kitchen table doing homework.
Yeah. I mean, these kind of things are just rippling across our entire, not only our state, but our entire country. And I have to say, if you have a DA or if you have anyone within the government that is talking about cashless bail, you need to get them out right now. There are so many stories that would just absolutely curl your toes if you knew that were going on in Portland. Like for me personally, I know that there's even cashless bail issues clear out in Wasco County, and that's one of our more rural, more kind of good hometown type of a place. And it's ridiculous to me that the Democrats keep pushing this. And my question is, why? It's a failed policy. It doesn't work. It makes our streets more dangerous. The idea of this like whole catch and release thing, what is the purpose of it? It just gives them an opportunity to run off and not face justice. And the thing is we see it. There was a number of cases like this. You have Californians running from some charge that they have, come up to Oregon, get arrested again, and then they just keep moving. And I have to say, it's only going to get worse until we get rid of every single person that is preaching this whole cashless bail thing.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned Wasco County, woke DA. Actually, there were 3, now there's 4.
Yep.
4 woke DAs in the state out of 36. And they're the ones who are always down in Salem testifying in front of the state legislature trying to get rid of Measure 11, which is one of the things that's dramatically reduced crime in the state.
And here's something that you guys should realize too, is that the DA from Wasco County, whenever he's got a question and wonders if he should charge somebody, you know who he calls up? He calls Multnomah County's DA and says, hey, what would you do in this situation? And it's been more than once where the DA in Wasco County says, or the DA from Multnomah County says, why would you enforce marijuana laws? It's legal here. And so it's really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous that we have one bad apple that's starting to spoil the bunch. We obviously need to get rid of the DA that we have here, and we need to absolute clean house where we need to have good attorneys and good judges. So all of you guys that are out there who are attorneys and judges, we need good men and women running for those offices more than anything right now.
Well, and remind me when we're going to talk in a little bit about some election integrity issues, and one of them relates to what took place in LA County with the attempt to recall the district attorney there. So we've got multiple problems kind of interdependent here, because if you try to get rid of somebody, sometimes they use the election system to thwart the will of the people of the various jurisdictions which are experiencing all this crime. But and by the way, this crime surge, this isn't like the Democrats want this to happen around election time. It's that it's so bad that they can't help it.
Yeah.
And in fact, nearly every day is another teachable moment in why everything that they're doing is literally destroying our system of justice and eviscerating public safety. And it's doing it in places that people never imagined they would be hearing or seeing anything like this. That's the other thing.
Perfect example of it is Andy No. He just put out a video just recently talking about there was a video and it showed basically black bloc people. I can't say if they're Antifa or not. They don't really carry signs saying that's who they are. But basically, they busted out the windows of an indigenous coffee shop. The owner was native, and they busted out the windows of it. And the reason why, it's because he had a Back the Blue event where cops drink free here. And
so people could talk with the cops from the community, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So they're kind of a terrorist cell that went after this a person who is just a law-abiding citizen that wanted to welcome people from the community and the police officers to talk with each other.
Yeah.
And Andy No did actually report that as identified as being Antifa from his sources, but it's there's just not a lot of people going in and committing acts of violence in black bloc in Portland. So, kind of got a pretty good chance. Like just,
well, I mean,
plus Antifa took credit for it. That was the other thing. That's why he said Antifa actually took credit for it, which,
if they ever want to raise it, they should dress up in other colors like purple or orange or, something that stands out a little bit more. That way you don't connect your other organizations together.
That's right. So just skipping up to some interesting national news, which is not going to make you feel more confident about our system of justice. Turns out that this Durham investigation that's been going on for what?
4 years?
Durham's been 2 years, and that started after the 3.5-year Trump-Russia probe, and which was all turned out to be totally bogus. So they had to do an investigation to find out why a totally bogus investigation went on for 3.5 years and who caused it. Piece of news came out today that an FBI analyst on Tuesday in federal court in testimony told special counsel John Durham that the FBI offered British spy Christopher Steele, former British spy Christopher Steele, who wrote the so-called Steele dossier, which turned out to be completely fake, up to $1 million. So that to give them the help of corroborating the evidence in the Steele dossier that, in fact, was arranged by people within the FBI and the DOJ on behalf of the Clinton campaign. And so they were offering $1 million. Now they're saying, but we didn't pay him $1 million. And it's like, but you then knew that it was uncorroborated if you couldn't pay the $1 million. So it's like, you saved the taxpayers $1 million, and you had a 3.5-year probe that cost, I think, $75 million, the Mueller investigation, and it disrupted the nation's proper functioning of government. It disrupted our foreign policy, which I think a lot of people would have liked to have steered our foreign policy with regard to what's going on in Europe and Russia in a different direction than where it's ended up, but it disrupted that. And it also cost dozens and dozens of people who did nothing wrong within the Trump administration to be forced to testify. Some of them were put into perjury traps, and a few were sent to jail. Others simply were bankrupted by the legal fees, and also that they could have a fake dossier they knew was fake the whole time.
Well, my question is at what point in time in our country's history did it become okay to attack your political adversaries with the court system like this? I really, really feel like the people that perpetuated this should be held accountable 100% of the law. And just like you were saying, where would we be if the president and everyone involved would have been able to do their jobs for the American people instead of play these games that are basically trying to run out the time clock? I think that the Democrat operatives that perpetrated this should definitely be called to heel for this. This is ridiculous.
I think it's treason, actually, to be honest. And if you talk to Democrats, they're like, yeah, but it was Trump and he deserved it. Well, actually, this isn't about Trump anymore. This is about the fact that, frankly, people have lost faith in the most powerful institutions of law enforcement and justice in the nation. And you might need those things to do the actual job they were supposed to do when people did trust them. You think the FBI would actually have to be a little concerned about terrorists and things like that, but they're not really concerned about that anymore because they're too busy going out and arresting grandmas for being in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, looking for a toilet in the Capitol building. You know, the corruption is so deep, and the house cleaning that's needed even goes beyond what President Trump talked about, draining the swamp. I don't even know if draining it would be enough now. I just hope that that this election leads to the opportunity to do that. And you know what's a good sign that this might be happening? So people might remember the name Tulsi Gabbard. She's turned into, you could say, Republicans' favorite Democrat, except as of today, even though she was a Democrat presidential candidate, she announced today that she's leaving the Democrat Party because, and she says, it's now controlled by a, quote, elitist cabal, unquote, which I think we all know is true. In fact, you know who knows it's true? The elitist cabal knows it's true. And she's been outspoken about it. She's from Hawaii. I don't agree with a whole bunch of things that she says on policy, but she tells the truth about the Democrat Party, and she has decided she's had enough of it.
Well, I have to say, working as a state chairman of the Young Republicans, I get an opportunity to kind of work around some of the younger people within our party. And what I kind of realize is, you know what, after going through 12 years of indoctrination through the college or through the public education, and then if they get college, they're getting indoctrinated in that. And you have to realize that people are at different places in their life. And I genuinely feel individuals like Tulsi Gabbard, she may have, feel really passionate about some of those democratic ideals of wanting to take care of people. But at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is so far and extreme to the left now that those people are the walkaways from the Democrat Party. And I have to say, be patient with them, welcome them, and teach them what it means to be a Republican. Teach them why, self-reliance and being able to be there for your community on an individual level. And I think it's a perfect opportunity for you to look at some of your Democratic friends that are really sick of the Tina Kotex of the world, or even the Betsy Johnsons. Sit down with them and talk to them about what it means to be a Republican. Because you know what? I saw a Tulsi Gabbard 3-gun competition training on, I think it was Instagram. Maybe it was Instagram, maybe it was Twitter. But you can find it online. And I got to tell you, she handles an AR-15 better than any other Democrat I've ever seen. So go check that out. That's pretty good.
That's who, when some incident occurs someplace and Democrats are afraid for their lives, they run to the Democrat or Republican who's actually packing and knows how to use a weapon to protect them. There's more stories like that even in Oregon. There was a knife-wielding guy in the state capitol here in Oregon, and a couple of the anti-gun Democrats heard about that, and they ran into the office of a Republican who actually they knew was packing and was a former special forces guy, and he was ready to act. And you know how they thanked him for that? They went and they banned any firearms being present on the Capitol grounds at all, to leave themselves defenseless against a knife-wielding attacker who apparently doesn't follow laws. Imagine that. I know.
Imagine that.
It's shocking. So anyway, well, I think that just is indicative of where things are heading here. And speaking of elitist cabals, President Brandon is coming to Oregon here And and I'm not making this up, but it's what it's what they've announced. Because the regular media just says he's coming to stump for Tina Kotek during an upcoming visit. I'll post a link to that. That was the fake news story of earlier in the week when they said we have no idea why he's coming to Oregon, and we're like, because Tina Kotek is in deep trouble, and apparently having Joe Biden come to Oregon is going to save her. But here's the best part of it. They are both huge on spending and taxes and have a record to prove it. And the theme of their summit that they're going to hold together is the Lowering Costs Summit. The lowering costs. I'm not making a joke. This is what they are calling it. They're doing a super awesome job of lowering costs in the middle of Biden inflation and Tina Kotek's endless increases in taxes and spending, for which she's directly responsible for 10 years as Speaker of the Oregon House. And she's not promising to reduce costs for people in Oregon, but they're going to say it anyway, just like the Inflation Reduction Act. After Joe Biden declared that inflation was zero, remember, back during the summer? Literally within days, he's signing the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce the 0% inflation, which doesn't reduce inflation at all. It's like it's a Green New Deal climate change bill to spend gazillions on climate change stuff and reduce inflation not at all.
Yeah, and I just wonder how much this event is going to cost. Whether it's the taxpayer for all the security, and then on top of that, if it's a private event, I wonder how much she's going to get her elite friends to come see Joe Biden for. But I have to tell you, I think we should make sure that we keep our eyes on the polling data on this, because I hate to tell you this, anywhere that Joe goes, he ruins things. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what her numbers are right after Joe comes, because he doesn't even know where he's at most of the time.
Oh, I know. And by the way, if you want to talk about a solution for insomnia, right before this so-called lowering cost summit that he's going to do with Tina Kotek, he's going to be holding a quote unquote rally with let's see. He's going to be holding a rally with grassroots volunteers of the Oregon Democrats. They're going to roll him in that sarcophagus, and he's going to pop out of there and then go and try to shake hands with people and ask to talk with deceased office holders and all kinds of things. Like, maybe they should have pushed this to Halloween, where it would have seemed more appropriate. Zombie-like activity would have fit in more. But they are holding a lowering cost summit. And just to remind folks, Tina Kotek alone has raised billions in new taxes here in Oregon, including the largest tax increase in Oregon history, the corporate activities tax, which just chased people out of the state.
Straight up sales tax. That's all it is. It's a sales tax.
Right. Exactly. It's a hidden sales tax is what it turned out to be. And it's supposed to fund roads, which have those gotten dramatically better since 2018? No.
Bike path.
And there's a 10-cent gas hike, a sales tax on cars, a brand new payroll tax on wages, higher auto fees, truck tax increases, and of course, famously, the nation's first bike tax is one of Tina Kotek's. And I'll never forget the look on that bike shop owner, like, back in 2018 when he found out that there was going to be a tax on the bikes. And he's like, but we're the good guys, I thought.
Yeah. Well, so quick question, Kevin, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but do you know approximately the biggest crowd that Joe Biden has been able to get at a rally? Because they seem pretty small.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that they never show the crowd, and the media, who those gumshoe reporters that follow him everywhere and ask the tough questions, never seem to report quite what the real crowd size is at any of these events. So we may actually never know. We may have to have a sequel to the Durham investigation just to find out what Joe Biden's actual crowd sizes were.
Yeah.
Now, Tina Kotek has also supported a 17% tax increase on small businesses. And this was done
during the pandemic.
That's right. And hospital taxes on hospitals again during the pandemic. Home healthcare license fees. And if that wasn't enough, an income tax kicker refund that they rated twice.
Yeah.
It's money that was supposed to go back to you because they estimated too much. They didn't estimate enough in terms of what they were going to spend relative to the tax revenue coming in. So that by law was supposed to go back to you.
Yep.
But of course, they consider it their money. So if you like high taxes, high crime, and high poverty, then there are people voting for Tina Kotek. We talked about this the other day, and this fits with what you were saying about, be kind to the Democrats who seem to be migrating away from the Kotek progressive left.
Yeah.
Because 57%, according to the DHM poll, 57% of Kotek voters think everything's fine in Oregon. 57%. And it's somewhere around 79% think it's somewhat okay or totally okay, which is a bizarre existence that must be for those folks, that they're just, everything's fine. So understand that they've been living in kind of this alternate universe of lies that the rest of us aren't living in. And it's going to take them a while to adjust. It's like after you take the red pill in the Matrix and you leave the Matrix, it's pretty rough. I think the first thing you do when you come out of that is you vomit, right? It's like, oh, liberal, and so, and then it takes, and then you're shivering and shaking, and then you're like, where am I? You're in the real world.
Well, I mean, Kevin, if I went back 4 years into the past and say, Kevin, this is what your country is going to be like, you wouldn't believe me. Like the stuff that's going on in our schools, the stuff that's going on with our taxes. I mean, the immigration, like all of the things, you wouldn't have believed me that like, I have to say, Joe Biden has been hyper effective in absolutely rocking this country to our core. And, it's time to take a stand and have your voice heard. You do that in the ballot box, and then we move forward.
Yeah, that script could never have been sold to a Hollywood studio 5 years ago. But at the same time, we get a chance to write the next chapter, which is that we have to issue a super shellacking to the Democrats, and it starts with places like Portland, where we send someone like Joan Hardesty back to the constellation of nonprofits where she can promote, climate equity and all kinds of garbage that she gets money from the state government for. But maybe she won't get so much if we elect Christine Drazan as governor. Now, Tina Kotek has another issue. It turns out that this one kind of, she's not really responding to questions about this right now. In a state that has a history of, let's say, Democrat sexual impropriety, going back to Neil Goldschmidt, Portland Mayor Sam Adams, Congressman David Wu. It's the hall of infamy of Democrats that have, and you guys can read the stories about them if you don't know that. If you're uninitiated to this, it's not even funny. This stuff is horrific that took place in the past. But it turns out that there's a state representative candidate running in House District 21 for the Democrats who is, of all things, a convicted felon, and she's endorsed him. And not only has she endorsed him, Tina Kotek has, he's a convicted drug felon, Ramiro R.J. Navarro. His opponent is Kevin Mannix, who is literally the photo negative policy-wise of R.J. Navarro in terms of dealing with hardcore felons and criminals in the state. Kevin Mannix is author of Measure 11. But then R.J. Navarro is hired as his field director. You know what a field director is, right? You go out in the field, you put up signs and organize volunteers. A a gentleman who was convicted for abusing a child, a sex crime done to a 14-year-old. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And Tina Kotek hasn't actually withdrawn her endorsement of RJ Navarro. So look, kind of likes this. This is her. These are her peeps. This is what she wants for the state. If you are going to believe anything that Tina Kotek says in these debates about how she's going to do something about all the crime around us, that this level of violence is intolerable, you should look at what she's doing here and say, will this person ever do anything about crime, or will she continue the policies that have made it dramatically worse?
Yeah. And, 2 points that I'd like to make about that is, one, you are who you allow to have happen around you, right?
Yeah, what you do. You are what you do. Yeah.
And the things is, if you allow your friends to do dangerous things like go drink and drive, that's bad. And that's on you. You shouldn't allow the people that you care about, the people that you work with, your peers, to put themselves into dangerous positions. But if you allow it and you know it, you cannot tell me that Tina Kotek doesn't have the push, the power in order to say, hey, this guy's a bad deal. You need to get him out of here. And I guarantee Tina Kotek knows 2 or 3 other people that don't hold felonies in order to go be your the field supervisor for that. But on the other hand, or on the same line as that, I was always under the impression that the more that you knew, the more authority that you hold within society, the greater responsibility that you have, and the more you should be held accountable for your bad actions. Tina Kotek knows about this. She knows about all of the issues that we've had before. And I have to tell you, what was the reason why Kate Brown was elected to governor? It was because one of these sketchy sex crimes. I don't remember. Was it to a minor? Was the governor? Did he assault his babysitter? Is that what it was?
Mm. Yeah, that goes back a little ways. I don't quite recall, but you mean this person? This it was a assault against a 14-year-old. I don't know all the details, but it's a matter of public record. So,
but like the fact is like this is rampant, and this is nothing.
Tina Kotek had nothing negative to say about Kate Brown going and releasing felon after felon after felon, including cold-blooded murderers that executed people. And they're like, well, yeah, but they're better people now, so let's let them out, and let's let another 1,000 people out of prison to go roam the streets in Oregon. And then, oh, look, we got a crime wave. Where did this come from? I think that what this is establishing is the real predicate for what people want in this state. The reason why Christine Drazan, has consistently been, over the past month plus, slightly up in the polls above Tina Kotek. And it's because people really, they're done with the failed leadership in the state and the failed policies, and they're actually ready for a change. And it's a big change because it's been a long time since Republicans have been elected to the governorship. But she was just on Fox News's Laura Ingraham yesterday, and did a pretty good interview. I recommend everybody take the time to watch it because she really laid it out. People in the rest of the country are becoming aware of what's going on here. And I think that this is giving hope to people across the rest of the country that before their cities and their states turn into what Portland and what Oregon has turned into, that they can actually stop this and change course, because even Oregon appears to be ready to change course. And this is being laid out for people. And of course, Christine is being rewarded by a lot of support and backing, not only from regular folks and donors and supporters and voters, but also nationally. They're really starting to pour resources in here because this would be a huge change. It'd be great.
It'd be amazing. And the red wave starts here. So we got to make sure that we go out and do what we need to do for our candidates. Oregon is going to show the West Coast that Republican leadership is the way that we win the West.
That's right. And, we can't be deterred by these things that we hear about our election system, but there's a pretty good story to pay attention to just when you think you might be like crazy. And I must be imagining how this election system has just gone wrong over and over again, and how you and I get immediately canceled for ever uttering a skeptical word about vote by mail or the voter rolls. They're perfect. So, Stephen, you just shut up about that, okay? Or you'll be canceled, and even the Secretary of State might call Facebook and have you taken down, which is, of course, what we want our government to do, since free speech has been canceled as well. You're guilty of misinformation for disagreeing with the government. Now, but in LA County, they tried to recall their district attorney, George Gascon, he's every bit of Mike Schmidt, and very, very unpopular at this point. This is on the heels of the San Francisco district attorney being recalled. Chesa Boudin was booted out of office. A lot of people who are starting to walk away from the Democrat Party, particularly Asian Americans in the San Francisco Bay Area, said the hell with this guy, and they got rid of him. They got him on the ballot. They voted him out back in June. Now, they tried to gather signatures for George Gascon's recall, but some tricks got played, and they've now been able to uncover this data, and they are going to be suing the LA County Registrar's Office, because the way recalls work is you have to get valid signatures equivalent to 10% of all registered voters, which in LA County is 566,000 people. And what happened was, anytime you want to make it harder for somebody to gather those signatures, just make sure that the denominator that you use in that calculation is as big as possible. And they did this in what has been described by the committee that was conducting this recall and gathering the signatures, extremely disturbing findings about the numbers. Both the number of people that they counted as voters, as well as the method and the results of invalidating signatures. They invalidated nearly 200,000 of the more than 715,000 signatures that were submitted. And the committee leaders say it's going to take a long time to go through and prove all of this. But it looks like that the campaign said that 39% of the signatures may have been improperly invalidated. Some signatures were allegedly incorrectly invalidated by claiming that the voters were not registered when they were. Simply, people claimed who were doing the validation that the person wasn't registered. So they're going to go after that. We have to fix these problems by scrutinizing this stuff and not letting them get away with it. And then the other thing they're doing is they bloated the voter rolls. They found a way to have as many as 550,000 people on the voter rolls who are incorrectly listed on the voter rolls that, in fact, are not legitimate voters. So they expanded the denominator, and then they hacked into the numerator so that they made it so that they could save this guy's bacon, even though 715,000 signatures were submitted before they went to examine them. I think this has always been the problem with voter rolls. If the voter rolls are garbage, if they're full of lies, they're going to steal elections or things like this.
I have to say, I think that if they disqualified all of the Californians that have moved up to Oregon within the last month,
yeah,
they might have made their mark. They might have made their mark. I see a lot of California plates, and I say, welcome, but make sure that you're voting the right way. You ran from California. It's time to make it right in Oregon. So make sure that you register to vote for the season.
Oh, yeah. And I think that we need to have accurate voter rolls. That is a prerequisite. And when they have somewhere around 10% of their voter rolls may actually not be legitimate voters, and then you're supposed to get 10% of registered voters to get somebody on the ballot to recall someone.
Well,
that right there is like, yeah, that's a problem that is huge and needs to be addressed relentlessly.
Well, this is especially important for like a state of like Oregon. They passed a law that now we can't clean up our voter rolls. We can't do the maintenance in order to pull those things out. And so if we're going to follow the rules when it comes to our recalls and things like that, do you think that there is a possibility that we could take the Secretary of State to court or to something to say, hey, look, these are not legitimate voter rolls, so therefore you give us the real numbers after it's done, in order to force them to do their job to clean up those rolls? Because if people haven't lived here, if they're dead, if they've moved to other states, there has to be a way that we can force them to clean up those rolls. I feel like that is the absolute duty of the Secretary of State.
I think that there's going to be a path forward here. The real deepest flaw in the Oregon voting system here is that the first thing they will tell you is that it's a complaint-driven system. So they don't go and do general audits. It's a complaint-driven system. The people to which the complaint is submitted are the same people who are overseeing the current system, which means they're the only ones who know what the complaints are. And most people, you're unable to catch somebody that has submitted false voter information. You can't catch them because the people to whom the complaints are submitted are the ones who are supposed to be catching them. Well, it's an incestuous system. It needs to be independently audited. It needs to be audited according to standard accounting practices that you would use for any system, which must maintain veracity. And so we're going to have to pursue this to the ends of the earth. Now, they will also tell you that you are that it's a complaint-driven system about which you are not allowed to complain, which, because that's misinformation. So it's kind of like this circular argument. And they say it's because there's nothing wrong with the system. It's perfect. Except Colorado mistakenly sent voter registration notices just the other day to 30,000 non-citizens. 30,000 people who are in no way eligible to vote in the state of Colorado or in the United States received, in fact, a voter registration notice.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Looks like another fundraising call.
That's right.
I won't be answering this one, folks, but I think if you go online and donate, you might actually be able to ward them off for a few days here.
Maybe.
But this is a system that it says they're urging people to register to vote if they aren't, and other people, they're notifying them that they are. And you know what the key flaw here is? They sent it to non-citizen state driver's licenses holders.
Yeah, intentionally. You don't just make that mistake. In order to spend that kind of money, they need to find the person. They need to audit that whole process to find out who was responsible for making that decision. And I don't care if it was a fat finger mistake. They need to lose their job for that, because it should straight up be every single person that registered to vote out of those. It should be voter fraud to the person who decided to get that printed out. There's
got to be consequences. Heads got to roll on this one. And they say it was a, quote, formatting error, unquote.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But
that's the ticket.
Yeah. But going back to what you said, I think that the state auditor needs to be in charge of in charge of voter integrity for the state, and they need to have their own budget. So when last presidential election, I went to the Multnomah County Elections Office, and I asked them in particular, how much money is dedicated to investigating potential voter fraud? And they said nothing. Like you said, it's a complaint-based system. And the thing is if you don't have a person that understands or knows what they're looking for when it comes to voter fraud, guess what? You're never going to find it. You're never going to find it.
Yes, you can never find something you're not looking for.
Yep.
That's kind of a fundamental truism. And then just remember, if you do decide that you think something is suspicious and you complain about it, shut up. Misinformation, Stephen. Okay.
Well,
got it.
And the other thing too is just the election processes in their own. As regular citizens, right? As regular citizens, we're not even allowed to know the processes that are involved when it comes to the IT or to the elections network security. And I find that to be completely ridiculous, because we should have a citizenry that is constantly vigilant of attacks against us. And the only way that we can do that is if we know what is going on within our own election system. And they don't even allow us to know.
Well, and And then there's other things that, in addition to the election system, that they're pressuring everybody to do or adopt or they're trying to make. One of them is that they want to force everybody to buy electric vehicles. Look, I've experienced an electric vehicle. They can be pretty nice, but there's there are pluses and minuses to them, but they're telling you that again, shut up, misinformation. If you point out anything that might be a minus. Or an issue that has to be confronted. And one of them is an energy analyst here is pointing out, his name's Bill Cinnamon, and he's pointing out that the charging of electric vehicles could actually turn out to be more expensive than running a car on gasoline. If you take the $3.50 per gallon amount, which it is for now until they make all the prices necessarily skyrocket, which they have been trying to do all the time, to quote President Obama from years ago. People they're gonna have a problem with getting people to adopt electric vehicles, and they realize that it's gonna cost more to charge these vehicles, because the overwhelming amount of electricity is and will be, for the foreseeable future, we're talking about reliable electricity, is going to be coming from fossil fuel generated electricity.
Yep.
And this is also pointed out here in Oregon by a gentleman with the Cascade Policy Institute, John Charles, who is saying, he's making exactly that point. Because as you think you are actually putting clean electricity into your car, they're going to be using fossil fuels to generate unless you like to charge your car with unreliable electricity. If that's your preference, then you can have unreliable transportation, and then see what that does for electric vehicles. Many people's homes, by the way, also are unable to accommodate these charging plugs that can charge your car quickly enough that you can use it again. I know people who have them. I know people who don't. If you drive more than 20 miles in a day, you may not actually be able to charge your car back up for the mileage that you drive every day. So you're going to have that thing sit somewhere for a couple of days, perhaps the weekend. And then you know what's going to happen? They're going to have what has occurred in places like California, where for now they're urging you not to charge your EV because they don't have enough electricity. Then they will raise the price of the electricity to deter you from it. And then later they will do what they love to do. They will issue a mandate and force you not to charge your car, because there's something about you, Stephen, that disqualifies you from charging your car today. I don't know what it is. I guess maybe you're a white guy, or I don't know, whatever they decide it is. Of course, they would never do that, right?
Well, I would hate to think that a government agency would potentially target their political opposition in the middle of a campaign, utilizing something along those lines. I mean, I think the IRS, they use the IRS as a weapon. The FBI, the DOJ. I mean, we go on and on and on. And if you don't think that they're going to use the Department of Energy, I mean,
or Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality.
Well, yeah, right. And I have to tell you, what I really love about this is, go ahead, look at your Democrat candidates out there. Okay, we are incredibly blessed to live on the Columbia River and have the Bonneville Dam and all of these different amazing cleaner energy generators out there. But you know what? Every single Democrat across the board wants to blow those dams out of the water so that they can have the salmon migration up there. So what are you doing? You're going to end up to where we're going to have a power grid that is hoping and praying that the wind blows that day in order for you to be able to charge your Tesla. I'm sorry, but I can't afford a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 vehicle because Joe Biden told me I had to. I can't afford it. I can't do it.
And if it's so super awesome and convenient and better, then
free market.
Why are they going to go and ban gas cars? New sales of gas cars by 2035, which they say 2035, but it's not long before they'll be saying 2025. If you don't vote in November to change who the hell is in charge of the state and change what's happening in Washington, D.C. That's really what it comes down to, is that if you think, well, it's not so bad now, well, just wait.
That's what all of these truck drivers, down in California had been thinking, is that, oh, well, you know what? It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll get somebody else in there. But you know what? Now you can't roll a truck through California that it doesn't have a DEF tank on it. And that put out hundreds of thousands of small business owner operators. And now we're having a supply crunch. And instead of saying temporary moratorium on that rule about no DEF trucks, they've doubled down. And they've increased the restrictions on those diesel vehicles. And you know what? We are all suffering from some dumb stuff that Gavin Newsom and his buddies down in California had decided to do. So I'm totally with you, Kevin. I think that this is ridiculous, the things that they're doing with the electric vehicles. We have to fix our grid. We have to fix all of our infrastructure pieces. And even then, it's not up to the government to decide what you own. It is your private property. If they think they can tell you what to do with your property, we already know they want to tell us what to do with our bodies. So are we free men, or are we property of the state?
Yeah,
I'm a free man.
Yeah, are we citizens or are we subjects? And that's what's at stake in this election. You get to decide with your ballot, which you better turn in, everybody. Here by November 8th at 8 p.m. And, several of the folks have pointed out how they lost power, that we have a pathetic electrical grid, that they can't handle air conditioning in the summer. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to tell you can't use it. That's what they're going to do. In Europe, where they don't have enough energy to heat homes and heat water, and generate electricity, they're telling people not to use energy over there. They're not going to fix it. That's the government. You put the government in charge of fixing something, what you're going to do is you always get rationing. You'll all be punished.
Well, I mean, a perfect example of this is what's going on at both CTRAN and TriMet for our brothers across the river there. They want to transition to all these electric buses, these electric tramways. And you know what? It's ridiculous. Because if you look at them, they can't operate in the cold. They can't operate in the heat. They have to drive around in restricted.
They can't operate in salt water, as they just found out in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many issues with the heavier electric vehicles. The technology needs to get there, and if our capitalist society decides that that's the direction that we want to go, it needs to be done through a free exchange instead of being told what to do. Like, do you really think that Tina Kotek can run your vehicle better than you can?
I think she can do that as well as John Hardesty can protect public safety. I think that probably is a good way to end our show here tonight, because it's bringing it full circle. And it's been great having you on here, Stephen. It's been a lot of fun, and we got to do this again.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you could you let folks know about what are the young Republicans and how can people get involved? I want to give you a chance to do that before we sign off here tonight.
Thank you very much. The Young Republicans are any Republican or conservative-minded individual from 18 to 40 years old. That's what goes for Young Republican nowadays. And you can get a hold of us at youngrepublicansoforegon.org. And we'd like to get together, talk conservative politics, and get you the training that you need in order to run for the next election. We want to see Oregon turn red, and that's the way we do it.
That's Young Republicans of Oregon.
Of Oregon.org.
Just typing it into the feed here. And I can tell you that's how I got my start. I was on the older end of the Young Republicans when I got involved, but it gave junior leadership opportunities that quickly translated into senior leadership opportunities and a way to grow and understand and learn the system. And of course, youth and enthusiasm make a huge difference, especially in politics. We got to bring up the next generation of folks to come on the heels of all of us who have been at this maybe a bit long, but then again, that's why we want to do it. We want to pass on what we know and what we've learned to you, and then learn from the new ideas you guys bring. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here tonight, and we look forward to having you on again. And we're going to make sure that everybody gets encouraged here in the coming weeks to vote. If anybody tells you they don't think their vote matters, they'll find out after Election Day whether it did or not. Why don't they just find out anyway by voting and making sure that their voices are heard? People died for that right, for you to do that, and we should honor that at a minimum in the coming weeks here in Oregon. And please share this show with everyone you can. It's easy to share it. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. You can just forward it to anyone and get them to sign up and follow our show so they get little notifications going forward. And thank you again, Stephen, for joining me here. And thank you again, everyone, for watching us. And we will see you tomorrow on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Have a great night, everyone.